you back for our next upcoming session, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're well and enjoying the networking. It certainly looks like that as I was walking around the foyer of ICE Krakow Congress Center. Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is sponsored by Incheon Songdo ICCA, and the title of this keynote is Crucial Stories for Critical Times. We've heard a lot about the critical times. We've experienced a lot of the critical times and the changes it has brought about. So our upcoming session is really about marketing, messaging, engagement, but also what especially corporations like to talk about, controlling your message. But ultimately, we've witnessed companies' reputations crumbling in no time and other companies rising to glory also in a very short period of time. Very strange, hectic, often unpredictable times we're living in. Here to talk about that in the context of how this new reality has affected client and public's behavior is Gustavo Koniszter, Managing Director at Future Brand Hispanic America. Let's welcome Gustavo with applause. Hello, sir. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm fine. Our stage is yours entirely. Enjoy.
Thank you. When I was a child in Buenos Aires, Argentina, the city where I still live, every night when I went to bed, I called my dad to come to tell me stories about his childhood in Poland. He was born in a very little Jewish town in the eastern part of the country called Ratno, and came to Argentina when he was 10 with his mother, my grandma, and his sister. I still remember his voice in the middle of the night telling me stories about a land of trees, a land of woods, children playing on an icy river with wooden-made toys, and speaking Polish, reading Yiddish. And the way my father actually helped me build that image of a remote country called Poland was through that stories. That magic became real when I first visited Poland 3 months ago, and it became true thanks to a story. Dlatego teraz uczę się języka polskiego. I co myślicie? I'm trying. Still there. Stories are always about nation. A nation is a story at the end of the day. A country is a story. A city is a story. A place is a story. And for me, having worked for more than 35 years in design, branding, communication, and when we talk about stories, we are literally talking about place brands. In Future Brand, the company I worked for, we've been creating country brands, city brands, places brands, brands of origin, sectoral brands, brands for industries. In many countries, I work in Hispanic America, that's where we are mostly creating these kind of brands. And we also learned that the purpose of a place brand is to position itself in the mind of the audiences. It's probably the most important thing. But that potential audiences can be composed by visitors, tourists, traders, business people, migrants, and so on. But the important thing to take into consideration is that that cannot be done by chance. It has to be done after following a methodology involving all key stakeholders since the very beginning. By the way, when I talk about countries, it's not just countries. Countries can be also related to regions. Regions are related to cities, and cities are related to places. And as an example, if we talk about Hollywood, Hollywood is in Los Angeles is in California, California is in the US, and actually they are all interacting, they are interrelated. The same can be applied, sometimes changing the elements of position, and we can talk about, for instance, Europe, Poland, Krakow, this beautiful city we are in, and this excellent place we are now also giving or in this conference. We have been studying this phenomenon since 2005 through these so-called future brand indexes, country indexes, and we actually do it in the same way we analyze and work with any branding project or program. That's taking into consideration two main axes, purpose and experience. And when we particularly work for places, countries, cities, and so on, we do it through this matrix of 22 attributes divided into 6 dimensions. On the experience, on the purpose side, on the left, on your left, you'll see that they are organized by business potential, value system, and the origin, made in. And on the experience side, tourism, heritage and cultural assets, and the quality of life that country can provide, or that country, that place, once more. And then we created a radar chart that helps us see how the brand is evolving into the audience's minds. According to the United Nations, there are 193 countries so far. I think there are more countries or so-called micronations as well. So there's a lot of countries with the right of saying that they have everything. And even more, there are some countries that actually their slogans say, "We have everything for you." We, in the last edition of our index, selected and ranked them in an order, of course, following the already mentioned analysis matrix. And these are the top 10. And particularly, I picked one that I particularly consider a very good example of how a brand can be promoted as a story. Remember the story word. Even more, I think that this country, which is New Zealand, doesn't actually have a real country brand. They have what they call a story, a country story. I've asked David Downs, who is the head of the New Zealand story, to be here through a video to explain us a little bit about how they are doing their job.
Well, kia ora, as we say here in New Zealand. I'm David Downs, the CEO of the New Zealand Story. I wanted to tell you a little bit about our country branding process and the work that we've been doing as a collaboration between the private sector, but also multiple government agencies like trade, like tourism and others, to define the values of New Zealand, this beautiful country that we come from, where largely our landscape is the most well-known feature of New Zealand. And that's not a bad thing, but it's not a complete picture either. We want people to know that this is not just a beautiful country, although it is, and you should come and visit, but it's also a country that has deep values and has science and innovation and technology. And so we use this concept of walking backwards into our future. It's a saying that we have here in New Zealand, looking at the history of the country and the stories that have forged us. You know, New Zealand was the last major landmass to be settled by humans over 1,000 years ago, and all the moments that have created us, this pioneering country, these people that came looking for a better life, helped us define the common thread. And this was a process that took over a year, multiple organizations involved, to define that the common thread of our country is a place where care for people and connection to the place we're from drives our ingenuity. And this now underpins a whole lot of work that government agencies are doing, and it helps us define the values of the country. You know, if New Zealand was a brand, our brand values would be around care for people, intergenerational guardianship of the land, around truth and honesty, and around this innovation, this curiosity, this adventurous spirit. All the campaign work that we now do, tourism, trade, diplomacy, sits on top of this bed of these values and this value proposition that we created through this collaborative process. I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful way to expand the vision and the view of your country so that we can see it in totality. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Enjoy the rest of your conference and thank you for having me.
Thank you, David. And after what we've seen, we understood that countries who properly invest in their brand rep the benefits. And for a country to be viewed successfully as a country brand, and once more, any place, needs to be confident, good for business, leader, trustworthy, promoting good quality of life, and so on. This is actually something that doesn't actually surprise anybody, but it's good to know that it's a confirmation now after in many different studies that we have been doing along the years, this comes out every time. And then happened what you all know. We all have experienced that, and I imagine that you are tired of listening to what happened during the pandemic, but we all know that many things changed, particularly in the MICE industry, where travelers had to change their behaviors, and that's the reason why, as the title of this presentation is, it is important to consider the stories as crucial for these critical times. And as an outcome of the study, we found out that country brands, city brands, and so on, matter more than ever. We cannot control external events, but what we can do is controlling countries' resilience. And resilience means that the nations which have invested in their country brands are, in some cases, even stronger in the eyes of the world than the time before. Some headlines to consider, to have in the agenda when promoting a place. The life pursuit, this is a kind of a sense of urgency that we have all experienced. Particularly, I don't know if you have had the opportunity to travel, to fly in the last Northern Hemisphere summer. It was a chaos. I experienced that as well, and it was basically because everybody just wanted to come again to fly, to travel, and that's why actually individuals are no longer waiting until retirement to enjoy good quality of life. Environmental friendliness, sustainability, and this is, as you can see, part of the main drivers of this conference. To be sustainable is not just a mask or a way to pretend something. It's actually something that must be inherited in and just part of the real DNA of all communications. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, once more. This is a must. I mean, it's very important to consider that there's no tolerance to non-inclusive messaging, to non-accessible spaces. Also, the economic dominance versus country appeal. GDP, once more, is not just the driver, the only driver for considering to go to a place, to visit a place, to get businesses with. And actually, the factors that now are going to be taken into consideration are similar to the dimensions that we use in the radar chart I mentioned before when we do our analysis. I want to share two stories with you, two cases where I was particularly involved. I was in charge of creating these two country brands in the last years. And one, as you could imagine after having seen that frog looking at you, is Costa Rica. Costa Rica, which, by the way, you will keep on listening to Costa Rica right after my conference. You will see how. Costa Rica had a very successful campaign when we started working with them in 2012. It was called Costa Rica, no artificial ingredients. It was a very successful tourism brand. The problem was that it was not enough to cover the needs of a country brand involving all kind of audiences, all kind of publics. And so we created we transformed it into Essential Costa Rica, which is the current country brand the country is using. And it's based on this idea of the essence. When you buy a perfume, for instance, the essence of the perfume is actually what keeps all the magic of the flavor of the fragrance. And why? Because it's a very tiny country, biodiverse, with the oldest democracy in Latin America, with a former president being awarded as a Nobel Prize for Peace, with very good education, super kind people, and so on. So we had a lot of good things to communicate to the world with this idea of essential. And we did it. We helped them in creating many communications. They are winning many awards in tourism fairs with their stands that reflect the best they can the nature. I forgot to mention that the country has 2/3 or more of the surface protected. And if you go to the website of the ICT, the tourism board, you will find that the word essential is there. I've also asked Lisette Acosta, who is head of mice industry for CINDE, which is the investment promotion agency of Costa Rica, to give us a speech as well.
Hello, I'm Lisette Acosta, a sector lead at CINDE. CINDE is the investment promotion agency of Costa Rica. And over the last 40 years, we have advised over more than 400 multinational companies to establish operations in Costa Rica, including 47 of Fortune 500. CINDE has been the top investment promotion agency in the world for 5 years in a row. Essential Costa Rica is born after the necessity to promote tourism, foreign investments, exports, and our culture to stand out in the world. With a total population of 5 million, we received more than 1.3 million international arrivals in 2021, achieving a faster recovery than the rest of the region. This is thanks to a customer-centric talent, a wide range of tourism infrastructure alternatives, and its value proposition to attract investment made up 3 key elements. People, in reference to its creative and innovation-driven populations, planet backing in its leadership in sustainability and prosperity as a place where companies can collaborate and grow. Our successful track record proves time and time again that those who visit Costa Rica are those who want to live their time in the best way, but mainly enrich themselves as a human beings. Pura vida.
Pura vida is the way they say hello, which means pure life. So that reflects actually the way, the kindness of the Costa Rican people. In the last edition of City Nation Place, an event that is taking place every November in London, in 3 days I'll be there. Last time was in 2019, and they won the best place brand of the year. Kudos to Costa Rica. And the second story I want to share with you is another very successful story, and it's not because I was working with it directly, but it's because of the results that this country is achieving. I hope that you have recognized Machu Picchu is now one of the new 7 wonders of the world. When we started working with them in 2010, we did it in the way I said that it must be done. We started with interviews, knowing the country. We did some surveys. We had also a counterpart, which was 25 members board of country brand communication people. And after that immersion phase, we came out with 6 prototypes of platforms, of strategic platforms, that finally and eventually led to this set of 3 pillars: multifaceted, specialist, and captivating. These brand pillars are still used to communicate every single piece of advertising, online communication, social network, etc., social media, to communicate what the brand has. This is the way they did it. Well, this brand, if you have had the chance to visit Lima or any place in Peru, you will probably have seen that the brand is everywhere. There's even a coin of a sol. Sol is the currency that has the brand in it, T-shirts, storefronts, and so on. It's really very popular. And another important factor to mention is that it was very precisely programmed. The way it was launched was coordinated by different sectors. This is a view of the presentation in Lima with the tourism and commerce minister, but at the same time, the new brand was unveiled in the ITB fair in Berlin in 2011, and on the other part of the world in New York, the economy minister was with 20 most significant business people of the country ringing the bell for the New York Stock Exchange session. The echo in the press was amazing immediately, and this also led us to keep on working with them to create other brands, sectorial brands like alpaca, Peru textiles, and coffees from Peru as well. The brand also was the link with the Peruvian people visiting Russia for the World Cup held in Moscow in the whole country. But this was a so-called Casa Peru, which was like the house of Peru that welcomed all the supporters of the national football team, soccer team. And Peru, by the way, won the first prize by the people elected its pavilion in the Dubai Expo in 2021 as the best one, as I said, last year. And last week, actually, in Uruguay, Carmen Julia Garcia, who's the lady to your right, she is the head of the Peru country brand, receiving the award to be the most sustainable Latin American country brand. She is also going to give us some words.
As a promotional tool for our country, the Peru brand has made it possible to unify messages to our audiences and reinforce our position at an international level. Thanks to this positioning that highlights not only the nature, beauty, culture, and history of Peru, we have been able to present ourselves to the world as a country prepared to receive not only tourists, but also prepared for meetings, incentives, conventions, and events, since we have suitable infrastructure as well as an offer of location and services prepared for the visitor of this segment. Today, the Peru brand is an asset when applying for an international associative congress. It is valued in the world of doctors, engineers, scientists, artists, among other professionals, as it represents Peru's support for the event. Likewise, it allows offering parallel programs where the visitor can enjoy our culture, history, and gastronomy. Although this sector was hit during pandemic, technology allowed events to be held virtually, developed by Peruvian institutions through different platforms. After a brief stint in hybrid events, we are returning to face-to-face events. In this scenario, Peru is emerging as an ideal destination for this segment, since it has the necessary logistics to hold events with high-quality standards and offers the world a unique and authentic proposal. This sector has grown progressively and is projected to be the fastest growing in the coming years.
And Peru, as you probably know, has a lot to offer in the gastronomy field. They are excellent. And to end this part, just want to say that there's, in one of the surveys that we performed, the brand has a super high acceptance level. To finalize, I just want to leave you with some math exercises. So be prepared, not that difficult. I call it the formula W times 5 plus C times 5. Which is that? What is this? Remember that we talked about what a brand can be seen through these true filters, purpose and experience. Now we're going to change the words. They will still be starting with P and E, but they will transform into planning and execution, which, by the way, is something similar. I mean, if you have a purpose, you need to have a plan to get that purpose real, to make that purpose real. If you want to transform an experience into something real for your customers, you will have to execute that program in a right way. So the 5 W's are for planning, the 5 C's are for execution. Let's start for the first part, planning. These are questions, actually, that one has to pose. One has to wonder where. Where means the place. Is it going to be the place, a place, just a place, a venue, a region, a country, a city? It's a province, it's a group of cities in 2 countries, or so on. The other is the why. Why I want to communicate what I want to communicate. Is it because of tourism? Is it because I need to change cliché? It is because I want to communicate a new offer. The what is through legacy, inclusion, sustainability. These are the tracks that you are working on. The way, is it going to be in a physical way, in a digital way, hybrid? It's going to be human touch, contact. It's going to be remote. It's going to be virtual, not. And finally, who? Who is the person? Who is the group of people I want to communicate to? Is it for locals? It is for vendors. It is B2B, B2C. It is for investors, tourists, and so on. The main idea of having something under this lineup of planning questions is to get a content. And that content can be actually the combination of whatever I want to select from each of the answers I want to have to each of the questions. So it can be, for instance, a country that needs to overcome a cliché, talking about sustainability, and in a digital way, for instance, in social media, and focused on investors. Or it can be a city that has to talk about business on the legacy track in a physical way, meaning stands, for instance, in a fair, or in different places where migrants can be in contact with us. Once we have this content, we go into the second part of the formula, which is the 5 C's. And first one is content. Second one is consensus. You have the content, but you need the consensus coming from all stakeholders to be aligned, to, at the end of the day, commit that they will really work for that content to be consistently communicated, which is the 4th C, consistency, probably the weakest part of the formula. It's very difficult to be consistent in this world, but at the end of the day, it is a question of control. We need to control the situation, otherwise they will say whatever, or they will think whatever they want to think. As somebody said, lack of communication is filled with bad communication. And finally, it's all about stories, as I said before. So the best way to communicate a story is actually not necessarily having an effort. If you have a good panorama, a good scenario, you don't have to really hide it. You can just unveil the curtain and there will be the story. The story that my father told me when he talked, when I was a child, stories about Poland. Dziękuję. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. You can download the report in one of the QRs and my contact details on the other one. Thank you.
Gustavo Koniszcza, thank you very much, Gustavo. Thank you so much. Gustavo, Managing Director at Future Brand Hispanic America. Ladies and gentlemen, let us thank the sponsor